reply to Trey Gowdy's committee has been that all the questions on my email about my vanished emails at the State Department have been answered. Well, the answer, unfortunately, she's partially right, but the answer was, I deleted them, so you can't have them. That's the way she answered the request for those missing emails. But, of course, the press simply says, and I went through the host of talk shows, I had them taped, well, Hillary Clinton, of course, has answered the questions about her emails. Yeah, you can't have them. I deleted them. That's the answer she's giving. Why is there not a greater... frankly, I think this is something the Attorney General should be looking into. She was a federal employee while she did this. She broke the rules. She has, I think, expressed contempt for Congress, which is the second time she's expressed contempt for Congress. The first, of course, was during Benghazi.
What does it matter?
What does it matter? Really.
She is contemptful of Congress, of the American people when they were in the White House, the way she treated the staff from when you hear, the stories coming out of it. Yeah. This is an attitude, and, I don't think this woman is capable of an attitude adjustment that would justify allowing her to live in the people's house.
But sure, you're being very mean to her, because after all, when she left the White House, all she had was $100 million, and according to her, that made her dirt poor.
Well, what? I can't wait for this coming week or two, because the book that just came out on all of her escapades is including an awful lot of information, including how she went to Russia, collected $500,000 for a speech. At the same time, she approved, while Secretary of State, that the Russians would be allowed to purchase the largest uranium mine in the United States, which produced 1/5, 20% of our American supply of uranium. At the same time as she does that, and that deal is approved, on the very same day, somehow $1 million from Russia ends up in her foundation money.
And of course, we have the information about the Loden Group, which was accused of human rights violation by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama when they were both senators. They donated, I believe it was a phenomenal sum of something like $500 million to the Clinton Foundation. And while Hillary was Secretary of State, somehow she dropped that investigation. What a coincidence.
Frank, I just can't figure out if the Republicans or the conservatives really are this group of very, very wealthy people. How come when you see fundraising efforts, are the Republicans putting on $25 dinners? And there was just a year ago, I'd say, a dinner in the town next to where I live by the Democrats, $35,000 a plate. I don't know about you, but, a lot of people don't make that much money in this country.
Right.
So if, the U.S. Senator from Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat, he and his family own the Empire State Building. And, 7 out of 10 of the richest in Congress, of congressmen and senators in Washington, are Democrats. So you go through all of these numbers and you start to think, wait a minute, why is it that the Republicans, why are the Democrats coming after the Republicans as the rich, when we know Wall Street probably donates a little bit more, actually, to the Democrats and to the Republicans?
Actually, I believe they donate a lot more to the Democrats than they do to the Republicans, which, by the way, is interesting. If you look at the course of economics over the Obama administration, Wall Street has been doing relatively well, while Main Street has been doing horribly. We can't confuse stock prices going up with the economy improving. If we look, I believe, both right before and during the Great Depression, there are many instances when the stock market did very well, thank you. Of course, the stock market crashed, but actually the stock market started to recover. Main Street didn't. So the government that caters to these big billionaires, that caters to the special interest, is not the government that caters to folks who just are a normal American family. But this is what the Clinton Foundation people, the Obamas, and all these so-called representatives of the people are actually dealing with.
Well, you know what? I was thinking the other day it would be really fun to sit down and to take all the numbers that this administration is using about the wealth of the American worker, which we know has dropped for each family dramatically, very much so. Yeah. You know, where the next generation is not going to be doing as well as this generation, first time in history, unless we really change things. I would love to take all of these numbers and just statistically play with them and move maybe a year or start counting from a different month and watch how you could alter them. Because the way this administration tells a story, they pick out the particular month or year that they want to talk about to make it sound like it's great. I could do the exact same thing and turn their argument 180 degrees around. I'm so tired of all these numbers and everything that comes out of Washington as if it's the truth. And the reality is it's only one small skewed piece of information. I know that when I talk to my friends, my family, to colleagues, if I go to the grocery store and I talk to the grocery clerks, people are not doing as well as they were.
Yeah. This has become a government of the very, very wealthy and the poor. The middle class has been squeezed out of any kind of real say in this administration, has been squeezed out of any kind of benefit from this administration.
You know, it's too bad, too, because some of what I'll probably shock you, Frank, some of what candidate Obama said sounded really good.
Well, if you recall, we've both been at one time or another in the political sphere. One of the little tricks that a candidate can use is, even if they're going to do just the opposite, is to nevertheless say they're the candidate of, and then go right ahead and screw that particular group, to be quite blunt. During the debates in 2008, and in fact during the debates in 2012, candidate Barack Obama used the phrase middle class almost ad nauseum. It was practically in every other paragraph of his statement, his speeches, or responses in the debates. And yet every one of his policies was anti-middle class. The political amateurism, and I don't know any other nice way to put it, of the Republicans is that in their statements, while their policies were certainly pro-middle class, they never really used the phrase middle class. Some of the pundits went back and looked at the transcript of the debates between Barack Obama and John McCain in 2008 and between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney in 2012. And fascinatingly enough, there it was. Barack Obama consistently said middle class, middle class, middle class, but his policies were basically hurting the middle class tremendously. Mitt Romney in 12 and McCain in 2008 had policies that were very much pro-middle class, not all that good for Wall Street, not giving any additional programs to the poor, very pro-middle class programs. And yet, in their speeches, they rarely used the phrase middle class.
And you know what? We're seeing our middle class is challenged in so many ways. The cost of education is up like 40% in recent years. We know with all the student loan programs, all the monies that they have available. Yet academia is not teaching or preparing our children. So that, to me, is hurting the middle class, the future middle class of America. We see their regulatory policy is really hurting small businesses.
Let me ask you a question, because you brought up a very good point, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Is there going to be a middle class in the future? And the reason I phrase it like that is that our leaders of tomorrow are coming out of universities. They're going to be, $100,000 in debt?
Or more.
Or more. Their parents can't help them out because they are already strained from bad economic policy now and rising prices, or they are going to help pay that student debt. The number of jobs keeps deteriorating. The only growth that we've seen in the job market has been in either minimum wage jobs, which, by the way, immigrants are taking more of than American residents, legal American citizens. So these kids come out up to their necks in debt with no really substantial job prospects. Prices of things like real estate continue to go up. Taxes are going up.
Kids are moving back home.
Do you think with those circumstances, or what do you think with those circumstances, is the future of the middle class in America?
I think that we're seeing challenges to the middle class. I'm afraid that the government's going to try and define what middle class, redefine what it means. It's a little bit of a scary proposition because students coming out today, as you said, with high debt and little prospect for getting the technologically advanced jobs of the future, they're not prepared. They're not prepared to do writing. They don't know the history of the United States, civics, ethics. They don't study. They don't study business the way they should, so they can even balance a checkbook. It's a scary proposition to see that these kids are going to grow and supposedly enter eventually the middle class when they're not prepared to. And then on top of that, you place government regulations, really over-regulations of the economy. The nanny state comes in. The gap, we've already seen it since President Obama entered office, the gap between the rich and the poor has actually grown, not shrunk.
Right.
So despite all of these things, we're going to have equality in America, the reality is it's worse for those people trying to make it into the middle class.
And if you are, let's say you are in one of the so-called growth fields, like technology, computer program, things of that sort, and you break out of college with a good degree in that type of subject, and you want to start your own business because, frankly, working for somebody else these days is so difficult because of the regulations. They don't want to pay the Obamacare fees and everything else, so they aren't hiring people. Let's say you're a brilliant graduate like our director, Jeff, and you decide that the companies are paying you next to nothing, and you're a brilliant man. You know how to start things. You can program your own games and do all that stuff that I can't even figure out how to describe. And you want to start your own business. The regulations against you and trying to start your own business, all the federal regulations, all the stuff that you have to pay, all the fees that you have to comply with, puts those hurdles in your way to make it almost impossible. We know, for example, from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's information, that more businesses have failed over the past, I believe, 20 years than have been started. We see this dearth of new businesses starting up. We know that one of the things that happened in the late 80s, early 90s, throughout the 90s, well, I guess to the mid-90s, was that there were a lot of tech startups, which actually gave a real spur to the economy. And that really helped us out for a while. But that's really not going to be able to happen again because of the increased regulations that we have, because it is so hard to start your own business. Let's say brilliant Jeff decides to start his own business, but obviously you can't do that on your own. You want to hire one or two people to help you out, do the bookkeeping, answer the phones, that sort of thing. Because it's so expensive to bring a new employee on because of things like Obamacare and so forth. How are you going to do it? So what hope is there at this point for the middle class unless we really change the direction that our government has been going into, unless we say it's the goal of our government to get more businesses started. It's the goal of our government to get more people employed. If we don't do that, where's the middle class going to be? Is the middle class going to exist?
I'm going to say yes, it is going to exist, and here's the reason why. People are upset with what's happening. We are the American people. We believe in freedom and prosperity and everything on the Statue of Liberty, all the words. That is, America. The reality is the legal immigrants that come to this country, they come here for better economic situation. They come here to have more freedom so their children can have a better life. There are enough people left in this country that understand that. And I think this time that rubber band is stretched so tight that when it comes to the 2016 election, we are going to see some big changes. We saw this happen when we moved from the time of President Carter in the late 70s up into the Reagan era, when people said, Reagan, a conservative, can't win in 1980. I mean, we heard that everywhere.
Well, you heard it from the Republican leadership.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They didn't want to stand up then, too. And we what did we have back in the late 70s? People were very disparaging about talking about America. We were coming out of the Vietnam War. We had double-digit inflation. We had interest rates on mortgage in some cases were like 18%. In some cases, credit cards could go as high as 30-something%. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. I don't know about you, but I remember in the earlier 70s sitting in line waiting for gasoline.
Gasoline,
you had to have, remember the license plates had to be even or odd numbers on the plates? I mean, things were in bad shape. And the leadership was still saying, oh, no, a conservative can't come in. Nobody's going to vote for a conservative. And what happened? The American people said, we had enough. We gave them a chance. It didn't work. Now it's time to change. Good change. I think that's what we're going to see, Frank.
Yeah, I hope so. I think one of the things that happened in the late 1970s, too, particularly in that Reagan election, was that the rank-and-file voter kind of said, the heck with you, to the leadership of both parties. Because if you recall,